You are now listening to Black Coffee, Crime, and Crochet, a true crime podcast where cozy meets criminal, hosted by Jasmine C.L. Prince. Grab your yarn, pour up an iced coffee, let's sit through the chaos.
Hey y'all, welcome back to Black Coffee, Crime, and Crochet. If this is your first time here, I think it's about time that I do an intro. I think I did one back in season 1. I'm not sure, so let's just do one again. Like I said, if this is your first time here, Black Coffee, Crime, and Crochet is a podcast where I tell scams and frauds. I wanted to tap into a different niche of true crime. I think that's how you say it. So I tackle scams and frauds, very little murder, if at all. I had one episode in season 1 just because there was a scam that involved murder. So that's how we got to it. But I typically just do scams and frauds. So it's a nice palate cleanse if you listen to a lot of murder heavy shows. But the twist is I only cover stories that were the scams or frauds were committed by Black men and women. So that's all you're going to get is Black stories on this one. And then I also always share an iced coffee, iced latte, iced something drink recipe with you. And I give you some type of crochet update. I was sharing patterns. I think I'm going to get back to that just because whenever I share stuff, people are like, oh, where'd you get the patterns? So I think I'm going to get back to patterns. But yeah, so that's what makes this show unique. I only tell stories by Black men and women. I only tell scams and frauds. If you get murder, it's going to be because it's attached to a scam or fraud. And you always get an iced coffee recipe and a crochet update project pattern, something of the sort. So that is me. That is the show. So that is an introduction. So let's get into this week. So December, another series. I think I'm liking this series format. So at least for now, we're going to stick with it. So the series this month is Sports Scams and Frauds. So I thought with this being bowl month, you know, I'm a big sports person. So why not? So with this first episode, it's a double feature. It's called The Player Conspiracies, Health, Wealth, and Hustle. So we're going to be diving into 2 unbelievable fraud scandals involving former pro athletes. These cases have it all. Big names, big money, and a wild playbook of deceit. I'll do something a little different too, because at the end we're going to compare the schemes and just see what happens with players after the game is over. Like, it's crazy. We see so many people, so many players, just after they're done, they don't know what to do. They don't have, the money's not there. So we're going to kind of get into that at the end of the show. Ooh, excuse me. But like I said, before we jump into the crime stories, this is where we do our coffee recipe of the week. So this one is a cold brew recipe. I call it Mocha Hustle Cold Brew. So the vibes for this one, strong, smooth, but also sweet. It looks like a dessert, but it's listen, you're gonna get some caffeine when you drink it. So the recipe is 1 cup cold brew coffee, a 1/2 cup chocolate milk. I usually drink oat milk, but whatever kind you want, chocolate milk. 1 tablespoon caramel syrup, 1 teaspoon vanilla syrup, and then your ice. And yes, like I said, the barista talk said ice goes in last. So you can either do coffee, milk, syrups, then ice, or however you want it. As long as your ice is in the last, that's how you assemble it. So there we got that. Now for our crochet update. If you listened last week with my husband, which by the way, I loved doing that with him. Hopefully y'all enjoyed it as much as we enjoyed recording it. But I told y'all how his polo just completely came apart. So we have given up on that. Now I'm back to the drawing board looking for a sweater because I started that in the summer when it was still polo season and short sleeves. Now it obviously is cold. So I'm looking for a men's sweater pattern, and I'm just going to frog that one and start all the way over. So that is a crochet update. All right, so enough of that. Let's get into it. That wasn't too much gap. So here we go. The first case we're covering is the NFL player healthcare fraud scheme. This one is, I'll tell you who it is when we get into it. So, this one is set in the world of the NFL, but instead of touchdowns and tackles, this story is about an off the field conspiracy. It all centers on a fund that was supposed to help retired players with medical expenses and one ex player who turned that fraud into his personal piggy bank. So let's set the stage. So we are back in 2002, or not 2002, 2006. As part of the NFL's collective bargaining agreement, the league and the players' union established the Gene Upshaw NFL Player Health Reimbursement Account Plan, which is a mouthful, so it was often just called the Gene Upshaw Health Plan for short. So this plan was designed as a good thing. It was a way to provide up to $350,000 of tax-free reimbursements for out-of-pocket medical expenses to each retired player, their spouse, and their dependents. Which that's amazing. Hopefully, nobody came up to any detrimental health issues, but $350,000 tax-free is amazing. So think of it like a very generous health savings account. If you are a retired NFL player and you need a surgery or pricey medical equipment not covered by insurance, you could submit the bill to this plan and get reimbursed. It was a nice safety net for players who sacrifice their bodies on the gridiron, which, they get beaten up a lot. So it's kind of like the least they can do. Like, yes, they get paid, but also, like I said, their bodies get beat up pretty badly. So now let's get into the ringleader. Enter Robert McCune. Robert McCune was a former NFL linebacker. He was drafted in 2005 and bounced around a few teams: Washington, Miami, Baltimore, and even the Cleveland Browns for a little bit. By the mid-2010s, his playing days were over, and like many retirees, he might have been looking for his next move. Unfortunately, that next move turned out to be fraud. McCune discovered a way to game the Gene Upshaw Health Fund, and he didn't keep it to himself. He effectively became the mastermind of a scheme to defraud the plan by submitting false medical claims. Okay, but let's back up for a little bit and talk about Robert McCune as a football player. So, in his early life, McCune attended LaFleur High School in Mobile, Alabama, playing football for Coach Ray Parker. He also was a 2-year letter winner and 4-year letter winner in track. He also did some time in the military. He served 3 years in the National Guard and was stationed in Korea and Kuwait. He was a linebacker. Also, I'm sorry, I'm all over the place. He was born March 9th, 1979. And he was a linebacker. So college career, he was redshirted. He went to Louisville, was his college. He was redshirted in 2000. It was named Special Teams Player of the Year in 2001 as a key member of the kick coverage unit. So he had 14 tackles, 9 solo, while playing all 13 games on the special teams as a reserve linebacker. In 2002, he played in every game, taking over middle linebacker duties in the final 2 games against Houston and Marshall when the starter was injured. That year, he recorded 48 tackles, 20 solos, with 1.5 stops for losses of 4 yards. He earned 3rd team All-Conference USA honors in 2003. He started every game at middle linebacker, leading the team, and ranked 7th in the conference with a career-high 143 tackles, 83 solos. He was an All-Conference USA first-team selection after starting every game at middle linebacker as a senior in 2004. He led the team for the 2nd straight year with 115 tackles, including 2 sacks and 4 stops for losses of 20 yards. So his professional career. He was drafted in 2005, 5th round, 154th overall pick. His career, he was with the Washington Redskins from 2005 2006, Miami Dolphins 2006 to 2007, Baltimore Ravens 2007 to 2008, Cleveland Browns 2009, but he was only there for the off season, like practice squad, so he didn't really play. And then he went to Canada and played for the Calgary Stampedes 2010, 2011, and Toronto Argonauts 2012, 2013. Yeah, so I wanted to just give a little bit about who he was as a player. So let's get back to why we're here today. So now we know that he's the ringleader of this fraud. So between June 2017 and April 2018, McCune and a group of co-conspirators, all former players like him, got busy filing a flurry of fake reimbursement claims. In less than 1 year, guys, McCune personally submitted about 68 claims on behalf of himself and 51 other players. 51, like that's crazy. But also, yes, greed has something to do with this, but also if he got 51 players to do this, is there something wrong with the system as well? Or did they just really get greedy? Because again, 350,000 is a lot. So, like I said, were they just being, I'm curious. Okay, let's keep going. So the claims they submitted were for expensive medical equipment. So think about devices like hyperbaric oxygen chambers, ultrasound machines, electromagnetic therapy devices, and other like really expensive high-end treatments that you might see in like a sports training gym or anything like that. Each claim was hefty, usually around $40,000 or more per item. And this is the kicker. None of that equipment was ever actually purchased or delivered. It was just on paper. So think back to the Detroit principals kickback scheme where they were sending the invoices, but they never actually ordered the paper, the chairs, or anything like that. Basically the same thing, just with healthcare equipment. So we're basically sending fake invoices or receipts to the plan saying, like, I bought this super expensive medical gadget for my health, and so give me my money back. And the plan, trusting these were legit expenses, would pay out the money. So, like, it's easy. I just got to give you this fake invoice, say I bought this machine, and then you give me my money back. So here's how it worked. So McCune obviously wasn't doing this alone. He was orchestrating it, but wasn't doing it alone. So he reportedly collected personal information from other retired players, things like their names, social security numbers, insurance IDs, addresses, birth dates, all the data you would need to file a claim in someone's name. So with that info in hand, McCune either coached the others on how to submit the false claims, or in many cases, he went ahead and just did it himself. So for each successful fake claim, McCune would demand a kickback or fee from the player, thousands of dollars per claim. Essentially, he'd say, I'll get you $40K from the plan, but you owe me a cut. It was like he appointed himself the fraud middleman, profiting off both the plan and his fellow players. So, like all frauds and scams, it's really cynical because this fund was meant to help players who might really need it. And here they are milking it for cash to spend on who knows what, like maintain their lifestyles or exceed their lifestyles, like keep up with the Joneses. Because I'm sure they're still getting pensions and stuff from the NFL. So it's like, we never understand why, because there really is never a valid reason. But, here we are. So some of these guys were not small names either. The conspiracy eventually involved at least 15 to 20 former NFL players. A few notable ones: Clinton Portis, former star running back. If you're a fan of Washington or Denver, you'll remember him. Then we have Tamarick Vanover, former kick returner. Joe Horn, a Pro Bowl wide receiver from New Orleans Saints. Corell Buckhalter, a running back, and like those are just a few names. Y'all, I think I put too much caffeine in my drink because I'm stumbling over on my words. I made a drink today. This is a sidebar tangent. I made a drink today because I'm doing Sitmas on my personal TikTok page, and so I'm just doing a lot of different stuff. And I made a dirty Coke using the holiday Coke, holiday vanilla Coke, and then I put like 4 shots of espresso in it. And I haven't eaten today either, so that's probably a bad idea. So I'm kind of jittery, so that's why I'm fumbling over my words, and I have ADHD. So, anyways, tangent. Back to the story. Okay, so some of the players actually did need money. For instance, it was public knowledge that Clinton Portis had faced financial troubles after retirement, but others were fairly well off. It was a mix of folks all tempted by, quote, free, which we know it's not, but free money. So, like always, we're wondering who snitched, how to get caught, how to fall apart, what happened. So, on paper, on surface, if the paperwork looks legit, why would anyone suspect fraud? Well, consider how brazen this got. In a very short window, 1 year, 2017 to 2018, a bunch of retired players all started asking for the maximum reimbursement for pricey devices. Like, come on, y'all. Often the same type of devices too, with invoices that probably had similarities. So they weren't even like intelligent about it. They didn't like spread it out. They didn't make sure the invoices were different. They didn't use different medical devices. It was all the same. So of course people are gonna look into it. So the insurance and reimbursement programs have watchdogs and auditors, and this spike of high cost claims raised red flags, as it should have. It was just too coincidental that so many ex-players suddenly needed hyperbaric oxygen chambers. Like, those are things that athletes use for recovery, which are really expensive and not typical home purchases. Like, you're not currently playing, so why do you need a hyperbaric oxygen chamber? What are you trying to recover from? So, sure enough, by 2018, the FBI was on the case. They launched an investigation spanning multiple states. The fraud was nationwide, with players in states from Florida to California filing claims. Investigators gathered evidence, probably discovering that the supposed equipment purchases had no actual vendor records or that serial numbers were bogus. So by December 2019, the hammer came down, y'all. We know by now that the feds don't come until their case is solid. So Robert McCune, Portis, Vanover, and several others were indicted by a federal grand jury in the Eastern District of Kentucky on charges of conspiracy to commit healthcare fraud. And just so y'all know, Kentucky, they did Kentucky because that's where the healthcare plan was administered out of. Because you're like, why Kentucky? But that's why. So let's get into the courtroom drama. So that was all in 2018, right? So now we get to 2021. That's when we actually get to court. Many of the accused decide to plead guilty rather than face trial. However, McCune, Portis, and Vanover initially fought the charges, and their case actually went to trial in fall of 2021. But here's where it gets interesting. After the trial started, which hardly ever happens, McCune abruptly switched his plea to guilty on the second day. So it seemed like once he saw all the evidence and what they had, which again, if the feds are coming for you, they already have a case. Their success rate is like 99% or something like that. So after he sees all the evidence, he just folded and took a plea. The trial against Portis and Vanover continued a bit longer, but ended in a hung jury or mistrial, meaning the jurors couldn't unanimously agree to convict or acquit on some counts. So rather than go through a whole retrial, both Portis and Vanover then also pleaded guilty within days. In fact, Portis pleaded guilty just 2 days after the mistrial, which I don't know. If there was a mistrial, like they were hung, I don't know. Depending on what the stakes were, I might have would roll my dice and took my chances because they might have acquitted him. But anyways, so maybe they saw the writing on the wall. I'm not sure. But by the end of 2021, at least 15 former players had pleaded guilty for their roles in the scheme. So everyone caught pretty much fessed up. So that just tells you, again, how solid the case was. So what went wrong? In essence, the scheme failed because its sheer scale and sloppiness. Like, I don't want to say be a smart criminal because you shouldn't be a criminal at all, but you should be a smart criminal. Like, if they had kept it small, a few, 5, 10 at most, definitely not 51, maybe they probably would have got away with it. But you have 51 people submitting dozens of claims that totaled about 2.9 million in fake claims in under a year. Of course, it's going to raise flags. And then the plan actually paid out about 2.5 of the 2.9. So you probably, if y'all hadn't gotten greedy, they probably would have got away with it. So once the fraud was suspected, it wasn't hard to prove. Like, they're literally, it was easy. There was no actual purchases of the equipment. The invoices looked the same. There was no serial numbers. Like, they probably turned on each other. Like, it probably just fell apart. So, aftermath and sentencing. So, Robert McCune, as a ringleader, got the harshest penalty, as it always happens. So, in February 2022, he was sentenced to 5 years in federal prison. He pleaded guilty to a slew of charges: conspiracy, multiple counts of healthcare fraud and wire fraud, plus aggravated identity theft for misusing other players' information. 5 years might sound low, given he was facing potentially decades behind bars, because each of the counts carried 10 to 20 years. But that likely reflects his plea deal and cooperation. But still, 5 years in the pen is not, that's still a lot of time. And he was in his early 40s. So, most are prime post-NFL players, NFL years spent in prison. Because, like I said, he's still young. So, then we get to Clinton Portis, which is probably the biggest name. He received a much lighter sentence. He was ordered to serve 6 months in prison, plus 6 months of home confinement. Portis had only about $99,000 in false claims attributed to him for costly medical equipment just over 2 months. And he paid it back before sentencing, so that probably has something to do with it. So the judge probably took that into account, and that he wasn't the mastermind, just a participant who admitted guilt and made restitution. So 6 months in prison is essentially a slap on the wrist compared to what he could have gotten, which was 10 years. Then Tamrick Vanover got about a year and a day, which I'm seeing that's a recurring theme. Like, if you go back to episode 2, I can't remember her name. Anaya, I think she got a year and a day for hers too. So I think that's for fraud. That must be like a standard. But he got a year and a day in prison because that extra day can make you eligible for good behavior. So that's what he got. And then similarly, some others like Cornell Buckhalter got 10 months in prison plus home detention. But then many others actually avoided prison entirely or served extremely short stints. For example, Edric Pruitt spent only 3 months in prison, and players like Carlos Rogers and James Butler got home detention and community service instead of jail. But perhaps more strikingly, Joe Horn, who, let's be honest, who was a pretty famous ex-Saints player, didn't get any prison at all. He was sentenced to just 200 hours of community service. So, why some got a lot of leniency? It likely came down to how much money they personally defrauded. Horn's take might have been smaller, and how cooperative they were with the investigators. So in the end, the NFL fraud scheme was a wake-up call. The league's health reimbursement plan was exploited by the very people it was meant to help. It also shone a light on a sad truth. Even high-earning athletes can end up in financial trouble and resort to crime. McCune had made decent money in his playing days, not millions like a superstar, but surely enough to live comfortably for a while. Like, you're still making more than the average American. Yet, here he was risking it all for fraudulent gains. The trust among former teammates also took a hit. Imagine being a retired player who genuinely needed that fund, now seeing it depleted and under tighter scrutiny because of others' greed. Like, I would be very upset. I actually need this money, and I got to jump through all these hoops now to prove I'm not frauding because you out here playing. And then one more angle to consider. This scheme was happening around 2017 and 2018. If you recall, not long before that, there was another high-profile sports fraud case, one involving NBA players. Keep that in mind. So it's like once one scam came to light, others did too. The sports world learned that if something seems off with benefit claims, investigate it, which they started to do. So, speaking of the NBA case, let's switch gears and head to the basketball court. Because this next one is very similar, where they're defrauding a health plan. But we got even more players involved, more complex tactics, and even more of a dramatic downfall. So, go ahead and top off your drink if you need to, because this is crazy. So this one is the NBA Health and Welfare Benefit Plan fraud. I probably should drink some water to calm down this caffeine, but here we go. So from the NFL to the NBA, different leagues, different players, but a strikingly similar hustle. So our story revolves around a benefit plan for NBA players and an ex-player named Terrence Williams, who decided to turn that plan into his personal ATM. So if the NFL scheme was bold, the NBA scheme was extra. More people involved, more elaborate fake paperwork, and even threats and impersonations thrown in the mix. So this one is wild. But before we get into it, again, let's see who Terrence Williams was as a player. Yes. So Terrence Williams was born June 28th, 1987, which you are very young, like, which is crazy. He went to Rainier Beach High School in Seattle, Washington, where he was a 4-year starter on the basketball team, which doesn't happen a lot. He helped the team to a state title in 2003. He averaged 21.7 points his senior year, which is a lot. He also was a starting wide receiver and free safety on the football team. So he considered attending IU and Kansas, but he ultimately went to University of Louisville. So he was drafted by the New Jersey Nets in 2009, first round, 11th overall pick, which is amazing. So his career, like I said, he was drafted by the Nets and signed a 4-year contract. So he got some playing time his rookie season, but he was relegated to lesser roles because of poor behavior. He was late to meetings, missed team bus, slept through shoot-arounds. Like, he just wasn't he didn't have a good attitude. So his playing time, he just didn't get out of playing time. But it increased after an injury to Devin Harris. So there was that. But like I said, so he was drafted by the Nets, but then he went to the Houston Rockets in 2010, Sacramento Kings in 2012, Boston Celtics in 2013. He was bouncing around a lot. Like, he went overseas and came back. He was just over everywhere. And then his last team was a Venezuelan team for the rest of 2015. So yeah, that was his last one. So, getting into the NBA scheme, this was the plan. The NBA's version, their NFL's version of the health plan was known as the NBA Players Health and Welfare Benefit Plan. So like the NFL is designed to help both current and former players and their families cover medical and dental costs. So basically, if you are a retired NBA player or even an active one and you have a legitimate medical expense not fully covered by insurance, same as the NFL, this plan could reimburse you. So, but the exact details like caps or co-pays differ from the NFL's plan, but the idea is the same: a pool of money to keep players healthy even after they've left the spotlight. So let's talk about, again, Terrence Williams. So around 2017, Terrence Williams apparently had a light bulb moment. Unfortunately, a criminal one, but it was a light bulb moment. He realized that the NBA's health and welfare plan could be exploited, and he got very organized about it. So from 2017 to 2020, and even into 2021, Williams led a sprawling scheme to defraud the plan of at least $5 million in false claims. That's crazy. Here's how it worked. Instead of fake equipment like the NFL guys, the NBA scheme was about fake medical services, particularly expensive dental and chiropractic treatments that never happened. So Williams positioned himself as the go-to guy for any former NBA player who wanted to make a quick buck off the health plan. He would recruit fellow players by basically saying, hey, I can get you reimbursed for a medical procedure you never actually got. Free money if you cut me in. Basically the same thing that happened with the NFL. But also, like the NFL, he didn't do it alone. He enlisted the help of actual medical professionals. So this is how the plan gets even deeper. This is one of the crazier aspects. He had a dentist in Beverly Hills, California, and doctors in both California and Washington State providing him with fraudulent invoices and paperwork. So even crazier, we're talking about licensed healthcare providers who were allegedly willing participants, creating fake receipts for root canals, crowns, other pricey dental work, and fake invoices for chiropractic or other treatments. That never happened. So why would they risk it? Presumably for a kickback or a piece of the action. Williams also had some non-medical accomplices who could whip up phony invoice forms that looked legit. So he basically had assembled like this network or assembly line of people who could get the job done. So armed with these fake invoices, Williams went player to player, often via text or email, which I don't understand because you're leaving a trail, but essentially said, I've got paperwork that says you had $50,000 worth of dental work at this Beverly Hills clinic. Submit it to the NBA plan and they'll reimburse you, and then you give me a kickback. So a lot of players thought this sounded like a great idea. Ultimately, at least 18 former players jumped on board, plus one player's wife, who was not a player but was eligible as a spouse. So we're talking notable names like Alan Anderson, a solid role player from the Nets, Tony Allen, championship-winning defensive star from the Celtics and Grizzlies, Glenn Big Baby Davis, another Celtics champ, Shannon Brown, Lakers champ, Sebastian Telfair, New York playground legend, Darius Miles, Ruben Patterson, Melvin Eli, Jamirio Moon, Antoine Wright, Greg Smith, Eddie Robertson, Milton Placio, Charles Watson Jr., Anthony Roten, and Chris Douglas Roberts, a.k.a. Supreme Bay. Whew! And then one spouse was Desiree Allen, Tony Allen's wife, who apparently also submitted claims, likely on Tony's behalf or her own as his dependent. That's a lot of people. So these players submitted claims saying they or their family members had gotten all kinds of treatments, root canals, crowns, TMJ therapies, chiropractic adjustments, you name it. The invoices looked real enough since some were actually from real clinics, just falsified details. But there were some glaring problems. Many of these players were nowhere near the clinic on the dates of the supposed treatments. Like, come on, y'all. You can at least go and be in the same city. Just don't go, or just go and sit there. Like, y'all are just being sloppy. If you're saying you're getting treatment on this day, at least go and be there. This is crazy. So, the FBI later revealed that they checked GPS data, travel records, even team box scores to prove it. For example, Craig Smith, a former Chicago Bulls player, claimed about $48,000 in dental work in Beverly Hills on December 20, 2018, but records showed he was actually playing pro ball in Taiwan that day. Y'all didn't even cross-reference your dates. The dude couldn't possibly be in a dentist chair in Beverly Hills when he was on the court in Taiwan. Like, a simple check of the game schedule and flight logs exposed a lie. Like, y'all could have, again, like, I'm not glamorizing fraud, but if you're gonna do it, at least make it believable. Like, dot all your I's, cross all your T's. Like, that's a simple, easy mistake that they could have gotten past. So that example is just one of many. Investigators found plenty of instances where the dates and locations just didn't add up. So Williams is cut. As a ringleader, Terrence Williams was doing this for profit. Duh. The players would pay him a portion of whatever they got reimbursed. Early on, it was reported he got at least $230,000 in kickback payments from his co-conspirators. Later, when it was all said and done, prosecutors put that number higher. Williams personally received at least $300,000 in kickbacks through this scheme. He was basically taxing his friends for the service of hooking them up with fake bills. So, now that we got all that, no, if that were all, you'd have a pretty run-of-the-mill fraud conspiracy. But Williams took it further into truly outrageous territory. So now we have identity theft and impersonation. At some point, the NBA plan administrators started asking questions, especially if a claim seemed fishy. So to keep the scam going, Williams resorted to impersonating an insurance plan employee. He actually created a fake email account that looked like it belonged to the plan's administrative manager. Using this alias, he contacted one of his co-conspirator players, basically pretending to be an official, to scare them into rejoining the scheme and paying him. The message was something like, "We know about your fraudulent claims. Pay a fine to me through to me, though he pretended it was to the plan, or we'll report you." So the audacity is high because he literally posed as the insurance company to extort a fellow fraudster demanding money. But it worked at least once. He got about $346,000 from one scared doctor co-conspirator by pretending to be the plan's, quote, employees and threatening exposure. Then we got threats of violence, where it gets even darker. So in April 2022, after Williams had already been charged and was out on pretrial release, he sent threatening texts to a witness he suspected was talking to the feds. He told this person that they were, quote, talking way too effing much and to, quote, shut the F up, end quote. And even said, quote, me spitting in your face is exactly what you'll see, end quote. That's just another level of, y'all need to get this man off the streets. Because that's just, and you're awaiting trial, which is crazy because you're supposed to be on your best behavior. But that's crazy. So these threats obviously were taken seriously. Prosecutors went to the judge and Williams got his bail revoked in May 2022, as he should have. He was put back behind bars pre-trial because he couldn't stop trying to intimidate people. And I hope, yeah. So anyway, so by late 2021, the scheme had fully unraveled. The FBI and an NYC-based fraud task force, the case was handled by the U.S. Attorney of the Southern District of New York, unsealed the indictments in October 2021, which It's crazy. Like, I was actually able to read this indictment, but the one from the NFL, that indictment was sealed. And I wonder why that one was sealed, but this one was unsealed. I couldn't find why, but that was very interesting that this one was unsealed, but the other one wasn't. But 18 ex-players and the one spouse were charged with conspiracy to commit healthcare fraud and wire fraud. And Williams got an extra charge for aggravated identity theft because of that impersonation of the plan employee. It made headlines everywhere, obviously. Because you remember seeing names and being like, wait, they did what? Shannon Brown did what? Big Baby did what? It was crazy. So here's what went wrong. Much like the NFL case, the scheme was doomed by its own success or excess. They stole a lot, about $3.9 million in false claims filed from 2017 to 2020, but at least they did more than a year, with about $2.5 million actually paid out to the defendants. So with nearly 20 people involved, which again, way better than 51, but still a lot, it was only a matter of time before inconsistencies popped up or someone slipped up. And it seems like several people did. The outlandish travel overlaps, like the Greg Smith case, made it easy for investigators to prove fraud. All they had to do was cross-reference dates and locations. Another thing, some players probably talked. When the feds came knocking, offering leniency for cooperation, conspirators often started singing like canaries. I suspect that's how they learned about Williams' threatening emails and texts. Co-conspirators turned over those emails to save themselves, which, hey. So, aftermath and sentencing. The legal fallout here has been unfolding over the past couple years. And so let's break it down. So, Terrence Williams, as the mastermind, faced the most heat. He initially pleaded not guilty, of course, considering his behavior issues he had and stuff. I'm not surprised. But in August 2022, he changed his plea to guilty, admitting to conspiracy to commit healthcare fraud and wire fraud, and to aggravated identity theft. The evidence was overwhelming, especially with paper trails and his own intimidating messages. So in August 2023, Williams was sentenced to 10 years in prison. Woo! The judge, Valerie Caparoni, really threw the book at him, citing how brazen and sprawling his scam was. On top of prison time, Williams, age 36 at sentencing, was ordered to pay $2.5 million in restitution, which is about what he took, and forfeit nearly $654,000 in ill-gotten gains. Whew. He'll also be on supervised release for 3 years after he serves his time. 10 years is a lot. He was 36. That's crazy. So he'll be 46 when he gets out, and then the 3 years of supervised release. But that's crazy. Many of the other players have seen their cases resolved with far lighter penalties. For instance, Tony Allen, one of the more famous names, pleaded guilty to the fraud conspiracy. He actually repaid most of the money, which if you have it to repay, why did you even do it in the first place? Like the other one in the NFL case who repaid it. Obviously, you don't need it. So greed is a strong drug. Strong drug. Because if he got $420,000 and was able to repay it. I don't understand. So in August 2023, Tony Allen was spared prison. He was sentenced to community service and supervised release, probation. He even gave a tearful apology in court, acknowledging he failed to uphold the NBA's values. The judge noted that Allen seemed lost after retirement and that he had made restitution, which likely influenced no prison time. I also find this interesting that in these cases, I don't know if it's because they're athletes or what, but in these cases, the ones who repaid their restitution got lighter sentences. But in the Detroit case, when those principals paid back their money, it didn't matter. Like they still got the book thrown at them. So I don't know if because there was children involved and they're like, supposed to be public officials instead of athletes. But I think that's really interesting that here, if you paid it back, you got a lighter sentence. But in that case, they didn't care. You had to go to jail no matter what. What y'all think about that? That's crazy. So then, so Tony Allen was spared prison. He was sentenced to community service and supervised release to probation. Like I said, okay, so Glenn Davis and others, it appeared that most of the others in this scheme, especially those who were just participants and not organizers, got relatively lenient treatment if they admitted guilt and paid back what they stole. In fact, as of late 2023, the news reported that most of the players avoided prison time or got minimal time. However, a few who had larger roles did get the prison sentences. Alan Anderson, who took another early recruiter in the scheme, or who was another early recruiter in the scheme, got 2 years. And Keon Dooling, a former player who wasn't on the original 18 but was later caught and had been an NBA Players Association official, which is crazy, got 2.5 years. They were considered scheme leaders under Williams, hence the prison time. But as of the last few updates, a few individuals like Will Bynum, Darius Miles, Big Baby Davis were still awaiting final sentencing, but none were expected to get anywhere near what Williams got. So it is worth highlighting the contrast in how justice was served. Williams, the mastermind, who also went off the rails with threats, got a very heavy sentence, whereas many of his co-conspirators got slaps on the wrist comparatively. But the message was clear. If you're the leader of the fraud ring, if you're the mastermind, you will bear the brunt of the punishment. But if you cooperate and pay up, you might escape with probation. So the NBA, much like the NFL, was likely embarrassed and angered by the scheme. These benefit plans are part of the league's commitment to take care of its athletes, and now they had to tighten oversight because of a handful of greedy individuals. The case also had a cultural impact. There were a lot of memes and jokes on social media when this broke. People were referencing how some of these players, like Big Baby or Darius Miles, had well-known extravagant lifestyles or money troubles post-retirement, and tying that to why they did this. But underlying the jokes was a real concern. Why are so many former athletes resorting to fraud? Which brings us to a bigger discussion. But before we do that, like I said, let's compare and contrast. So similarities, they both exploited the benefits plan. They both made false claims for big money. There was both the element of ringleaders and kickbacks. The timeline was around in the same time, and in aftermath, the ringleaders got the harsher sentences. Okay, so differences: the method of the fraud. The NFL was simpler, fake invoices for equipment, whereas the NBA had actual dentists and doctors generating fake records, which adds a layer of complexity. Then extra criminal behavior. Williams took things to extremes with identity theft and witness tampering. He impersonated an insurance plan official to scare co-conspirators, and he threatened a witness with violence. The NFL scheme didn't have any known element of threats or impersonating FBI agents or anything. The scale of people. The NBA scheme had more high-profile names involved, subjectively, and the NFL had a couple big names, but not as many. The NBA had multiple NBA champions and well-known players, which meant the NBA case got arguably more media buzz at the time. And then the outcomes, we see difference in severity. Williams got 10 years, and McCune got 5. But again, Williams did the witness tampering, the fraudulent, he just did a whole bunch more. And then the public reaction and cultural context. NFL scandal broke during a time when the league was dealing with issues of how it treats retired players. So some commentary was, these guys scammed a fund meant for injured retirees, which is not a good look. And then with the NBA, they were flying high with big revenues and players on hefty contracts, which was almost more shocking because you think of the NBA as a league where players earn huge guaranteed contracts. So seeing 18 ex-players allegedly stealing $5 million collectively made people shake their heads. Like, why? Again, if you had the money to pay it back, you didn't need to steal it in the first place. So this is going to take us into Sip or Spill because this is a very long episode. So the super spill question: when athletes retire, do you think their money problems come from bad advice, bad habits, or the system failing them from the start? So it's a tough question because it's not one size fits all, because we saw that some players actually needed money and help and others didn't. Um so roughly, um there's a widely cited report, which I'm tagging, that noted the majority of NFL and NBA players end up in serious financial distress just a few years after retirement. Roughly 78% of former NFL players face financial stress or bankruptcy within 2 years of leaving the league, and about 60% of former NBA players go broke within 5 years, which is wild. So, what or who is to blame? Bad advice, like shady financial managers or hanger ons giving poor advice. Bad habits, like lavish lifestyle, risky investments, or the pressure to keep up, even when the checks stop, which we saw with, if you all know, Lorenzen Wright, who his wife murdered him. He had a lot of issues because he was trying to keep up after he left, and he ended up in a lot of debt. So, or is it the system failing them? Meaning maybe the leagues and players associations aren't doing enough to educate and support athletes for life, even after they stop playing. Honestly, I think it might be a mix of all three. I'm not sure. Many players come from backgrounds where they weren't taught financial literacy, or they get with these financial advisors who take advantage of them. Like we know Peggy Fulford was a financial manager who stole from her clients. I'll probably cover her, but it could be a mix of a lot of things. But it's definitely a recipe for trouble. But I'm really curious about y'all's take. So please let me know on social media or something, or in the comments or something, what y'all think. Do you think these leagues could do more to prevent the kind of scams, or do you think it was just greed? So, that was a lot, but it was fun. So that was episode 1 of Sports Scams and Frauds. Yeah, that was a lot. But as always, let's find a review. Again, please leave a review on Apple, because I'm starting to run out of reviews, guys. So if y'all can find it in your hearts to leave a review, so that not only so I can read it, but also it helps other people find the show too. So that would be amazing. So this review, I'm trying to remember all the ones that I've already read. Oh, this is a new review. So this one is from a day ago. It's 3 stars. Okay. From Cocoa Butter 4484. Podcast episodes are really interesting, but hard to listen to because of all the ums. Could easily become one of my favorites and top podcasts if this can be worked out. Okay, that's fair. Thank you for leaving the review. I definitely will work on that. See, here we go. I will work on that. I got to figure out what to use in place of the ums. A lot of times it's because of my ADHD. My brain is working faster than my mouth, but I will work on that. That is my first 3-star review. Is it my first 3-star review, or is it the second? It's the first 3-star. So, okay, that's fair. I will work on the ums. But Cocoa Butter, thank you for leaving a review. Hopefully you don't leave, and give me a chance to work on it. Because I said it again, because I definitely will. I will keep that in the back of my mind. So that is the review. So again, tag me if you answer the super spoke question or talk about it. Definitely tag me. I'm at Black Coffee Crime Crochet. Also follow me everywhere. Join a discussion group. See, here we go. I'm Cocoa Butter. I promise you, I'm gonna work on it. But that is all we have. I know this was a long one, but hopefully you all enjoyed it. So until next time, stay caffeinated, stay curious, and stay crafty. Bye.
Disclaimer. great effort is made to ensure that all materials used in Black Coffee Crime and Crochet adhere to fair use guidelines. No copyright infringement is intended. If you are the copyright owner or represent the owner of any material used in this content and have concerns about its use, please contact me and I will promptly address the issue.